Hello, this is astrologer coach Sonja Francis, and today we're going to be talking about the upcoming new moon in Leo, which will become exact on August 18th at 10:42 p.m. New York time, US East Coast time, and at 3:42 a.m. nice and early in the morning London time on August 19th. So this moon aligns with the sun in 26.5 degrees of Leo. And it's always a good idea with a new moon to get really quiet around the time of the new moon and to just kind of go within, to meditate, to stay still and really get in touch with your intuitive self and see if you're getting any new messages or ideas. And if you are, you might want to fold them into any intentions that you might want to be setting for the new moon cycle. And I will be talking about this process a little bit later in the forecast, and I'll give you the very best and most potent times to do that. So stay tuned if you're interested in that process. And also, please take advantage of the timestamps that I'll be adding to the description part at the bottom of this video, underneath this video. In case you want to watch this video in either shorter sequences or you want to skip to a later part in the video, the timestamps are really great for that. Now, the new moon in fun-loving, extroverted, expressive Leo has us looking for heartfelt experiences. Anything that's where we can really express ourselves, where we can learn about love, where we can connect to our inner child. In particular, we want to learn about how things work together in helping us create from the heart and from a place of joy. And we want to think about the keywords of the self-expressed fire sign, which are pride, generosity, hospitality, caring, warmth, being authoritative, but from a heartfelt place, active, open, fun-loving. These are all Leo qualities. So how could you live into these words for the next month, for the next 28 days after the 18th or the 19th, depending on where you live in the world? Now, Leo is ruled by the sun, and so the sun is the symbol of consciousness, and it's really about our unique light and what we came here to shine in this lifetime and what we want to shine our energy on. And so this is what we're here to explore and express. So ask yourself, where could I shine my unique light more brightly, and what brings me joy in life? And not just in general, but in this very moment, if I check in with myself, what brings me joy right now? And this is something we can ask ourselves every day, really. We can wake up in the morning, we can say, okay, what do I want to connect with today that brings me joy? Now, Leo also represents our creativity because it's connected to our inner child and to our inner creative child, or to our inner healthy, playful child. And so there's so many ways to be creative, just like you can see it with children. Every child is a little bit different in how they are being creative and self-expressed. So just remember that we're all creators, and that we create with every thought that we have, with every word that we speak, and with every action that we take. And that's really important to remember, that we're sort of like conscious about that we're conscious about how we're actually creating the things in our lives. Now, creativity requires innocence. It requires curiosity. It requires courage and playfulness. So to live it out, we really have to tap into our own unique spark, but also tap into the places in us that are capable of being joyful, and allow ourselves the freedom to make mistakes. And of course, this is not always so easy for adults. But children, if you look at children, how they create and how they play, when they make a mistake, they kind of go like, oops, and they move on. Especially younger children. The older the children get and the more they've been conditioned that mistakes are not okay, that's when they start to become more upset about making mistakes. And as adults, we also have that issue. When we make mistakes, we tend to cringe, or we tend to tense up, We tend to not be happy with the fact that we've made a mistake and say something critical to ourselves. So very seldom, you see adults make mistakes and go, oops, I just made a mistake, let me move on. That's not very often what we see modeled to us either. So the thing to remember, though, is that creativity really thrives on love and permission and gets really stifled by judgment and fear. And, so when we judge ourselves or when we judge others for making mistakes, that can really take away a person's ability to be creative and self-expressed. So take a moment right now, maybe even, pause this after I say what I'm saying. Take a moment to contact your free inner child and go to that place inside of you that is ready to play and create. And just ask yourself, what might encourage that inner child inside of me to come out and play? And if you are not sure, there's no need to, pressure yourself or to start guessing. Just keep asking yourself really gently and directly, and just see what comes up. And if it doesn't come up right away, that's okay. Then just give yourself some space, and then keep asking again, gently and directly, what does my inner child need to come out and play? Now, since Mercury is also currently moving through Leo, this is definitely adding more weight to the Leo energy because we have the moon and the sun and Mercury in Leo. And so Mercury also closely aligns with the new moon. So it's very, very tight in terms of the orbs. And that encourages us to be more aware of our thoughts and exchanges with other people. So all those planets in Leo really encourage us to align with our heart and be playful and joyful. And we also get an opportunity to connect to our inner child and children in general. So if this is something that you have an opportunity to do for the next 28 days, connect with the children in your life if you don't have children of your own. And you might say this kind of builds also on an earlier question that we already posed, which is what brings me joy? And not just in general, but in this very moment of now. And you can also ask, what drains my vitality and what energizes me? Because when something feels draining to us, that means that that our energy body cannot quite connect with it. It feels stifled in some way. So we want to pay attention and be very conscious about what are some of the things that that drain our vitality. Maybe we've just had a thought. Maybe we've just said something to someone else. Maybe we've just heard something or seen something that kind of stifles our vitality or that drains us in some way. So just pay attention to those things because that really gives us a lot of information when we pay attention to that. And when you see the things that energize you, same thing. When you see, what sort of like makes your heart beat louder in a sense of like, it puts a smile on your face, or, your mind just starts to open up and go into a really happy place. What are those things that make you happy? And can be little things and can be big things. Then what have I always wanted to say? What have I always wanted to express or say to, the world, to other people, to myself? And who have I always wanted to be? Like as children, it's so easy as children to play with this thought, like, I want to be this when I grow up, or I want to be this right now. And we put on some different clothes, or we dance, or we sing, or we do something that puts us into a place of being somebody different from who we actually are. And if we can play with that, with that inner child fantasy, who have I always wanted to be? And what if just for right now and just as an experiment, I met life with a courageously open heart and mind? And that's important, right? The heart is the Leo part. The mind is, having Mercury there as well, And now if you want to have access to the new moon questions from this video, of course, in writing, and also to the full moon videos every month. Feel free to check out the various levels of membership that are available on my website at astrologercoach.com. And if you're already a member, then check your membership portal by signing into your account that you will find, on my website on the top right-hand side corner. And you will find all the posts that I post on my website for members and non-members inside the My Content tab. So you can click on each of the posts very easily from that place. Now, the new moon questions are going to be available via the New Moon in Leo article, and that will be posted at the very latest by August 13th. However, I do recommend, if you want to work with the new moon questions, I recommend that you start working with them after the new moon becomes exact, not before already. So really wait until August 18th or August 19th, depending on where you live, and start working with the questions at that point for the next 28 days. Now, here are some aspects that are connected to the new moon chart. So let's talk about some of these. The new moon Mercury alignment in Leo trines Mars in Aries and the South Node in Sagittarius. So whenever we have a trine, a big trine like that, which is called a grand trine, we're actually dealing with all fire signs with the same element. So a healthy fire is something that is fed by joy, by authenticity, and by self-determination. So you could say there's a fire burning in our belly, and we kind of want to really go out in the world, and we want to let the world know that we're here, that we want to be ourselves, that we want to share from a joyful, passionate place, right? That's kind of a healthy fire. Now, the trine, or this grand trine, really brings a lot of optimism and enthusiasm, and also expansion to our personal goals, to our creative projects, and our explorations that we're currently taking, that we're currently looking into. Now, our positive attitude really helps us to take risks that get us unstuck, and we have the energy to blast through all of these challenges that we might be facing currently. Because let's face it, there's a lot going on also in terms of challenges right now as well, with all those planets in Capricorn, adversities and such. So we have, with all this fire that's there now as well, we tend to have the energy to be courageous and move through these challenges. Now ask yourself, what could I tackle right now that seemed impossible in the past? What am I passionate about? And what lights my fire? What is it that really gives me this fire in my belly, in my center, in the center of my torso? However, one thing that we also want to remember with fire is that even if there is a lot of fire in your own chart or by transit, fire can be extinguished by some other factors. So we want to make sure that we always pay attention to what can blow our fire out, because fire is life force, right? And so it's important for us to have life force to a certain degree, just so that we can move through life with more ease. Now, the things that can extinguish fire is it can be blown out by too much air. So if you have too much air in your chart, which is the air signs, Gemini, Libra, Aquarius, that happens when we start to overanalyze things, right? Because air is to do with the mind energy, and so when we get overly analytical, fire can get crushed from that. Then it could also get drowned by an excess of water, right? The water signs are Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces. So if we become emotionally blocked, or if we get stuck in an emotion, if we can't let go of an emotion for some reason, then also the fire gets kind of gets taken out. And finally, also, it could get buried under too much earth. And earth, of course, is Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn. Now, if we resist going beyond traditional values or comforts, which earth can get attached to, traditions and to things that are comfortable for us on a human level, on a physical level on this planet. that's also when we get too attached there, when we get resistant, that's when fire can get extinguished as well. So the last thing that I just mentioned with too much earth leads me to talk about the next aspect, which is that even though we have this beautiful grand fire trine, Mars in Aries, which is part of that grand trine, also squares Saturn and Pluto in Capricorn. And of course, Saturn and Capricorn are both associated with the element earth. So there we have sort of like a lot of earth that could maybe, bury all that fire. So we want to pay attention to that. Pluto, on the other hand, which is also part of this square, is connected more to water, to the water element. In particular, it's associated with emotional fire. Sometimes it can also go to the darker side of things. So we have this like water-fire combination here, but it can also sometimes drain out the pure fire, which Mars in Aries is, because Pluto, with an emotional fire like that, you can get stuck in the emotion. So Mars in Aries is pure fire, because Mars is in its own sign. And at its best, when we look at Mars in Aries at its highest vibration or at its lightest vibration, it is courageous, enthusiastic, and passionate, and it is direct in its approach and wants to move fast. And it represents our personal assertiveness that we need to make things happen out there in the world, and our ability to fight for what we need and want. And when I say fight, I don't necessarily mean that it has to be a fight. It can be on a lower vibration, but a fight can also just be like, hey, I'm like going after this. I'm fighting for this, for myself. It can be a positive thing as well. Now, Saturn in Capricorn is pure earth, because Saturn is in its own sign. And at its best, at its highest vibration, it is responsible, cautious, masterful, deliberate, practical. And it wants to take things one step at a time. It is about our social structures and society as a whole. And it's very much about how can we coexist on this planet. What practical rules or regulations are needed to live together and to support each other so that it works on a social level. Now, Pluto in Capricorn is sort of like a mix of water, fire, and earth, because Pluto is connected to Scorpio, which is a fire-water combination. And then Capricorn, of course, is connected to earth. So at its best, at its highest vibration, Pluto in Capricorn seeks empowerment and authentic emotional connections for society. It wants to bring to the surface, or it wants to make conscious, all the dark aspects that are connected to society. So all the shadow parts that have not yet been integrated, all the energies or parts of society that we've not fully integrated in society yet, that are sort of like pushed aside. And so these parts may ultimately bring this empowerment to the collective or to society if they fail to be integrated in a healthy way. And so that's where Pluto comes in. Pluto brings conscious awareness to those parts of our society so we can start to integrate them. And by doing so, we can create a healthier, more integrated, and deeply passionate society that functions better, with social structures in place that sort of like have more of a long-term function and that really empower us as a society. And so as we can see here, Mars in Aries carries a very different vibration from Saturn and Pluto in Capricorn, which is much more practically oriented, whereas Mars in Aries is more like a starter-up energy. It's more about, energy moving outwards into the world and doing something, that we feel passionate about. So how do we work with these energies since they're making a square, which is a challenging aspect, since they're making a square to each other? Now, this is an especially important question because we're going to need to engage with this combination, with this square, for pretty much the rest of the year, because Mars is going into a retrograde phase in September. Saturn and Pluto are going to be stationing to go direct also in September and October. So we're definitely going to be dealing with this square for quite a while. So let's get familiar with how we can deal with that. As best as you can, start with your inner Mars, right? The inner Mars is the voice that you have, your opinion, state your opinions, your needs in the present moment. In other words, assert yourself, be courageous and direct, especially whenever something comes up that needs your input, whenever something comes up that needs your voice. And don't stop there though, right? So that's just the first step. So once you've given your voice, once you've given, you've put out there what is in alignment with you, give yourself permission to stay open and take responsibility for your current situation. In other words, access your inner Saturn. Saturn is all about taking responsibility, being self-responsible. Now, if you find yourself in a situation where your inner Mars feels ineffective, do your very best to stay open and trusting, if that's possible, or remove yourself from a situation, and or only focus on what you actually have control over. In other words, access your inner Pluto. Pluto wants us to go deeper and to take a look at what's there that we actually do have control over, and what's been holding us back, or what's been keeping us sort of like in a place of needing to control the things that we don't have control over. And how can we trust the process of transformation? How can we trust the process of making things conscious that need our love, that need our connecting? So ask yourself, what would it look like if I expressed myself unapologetically, directly and passionately? And what if I also decided to bring maturity and self-responsibility to the table when moving ahead with my own passions and goals, no matter what? So this is sort of like, again, what I said earlier about, being self-responsible is really key. It's not just about putting all of our opinions and needs and voicing everything that we need to voice out there, putting it out there, but it's also about saying, I'm doing this because I need to say what I need to say, but I'm also taking responsibility for what I'm doing, for who I am, for what I'm creating out there in the world, and how I'm connecting with society, how I'm connecting with the outside world. Now, another question you can ask here is, could I surrender my fears about those things that I lack any control over at this time? Could I surrender my fears? Because often when we don't have control over something, there is fear that pops up when that happens. And it's human, it's natural. But we want to be conscious of that. We want to actually pay attention to that when that happens. That's very powerful. And so could I surrender my fears about those things that I lack any control over at this time? And could I elevate my understanding of the anger or irritation that arises when I feel out of control? So when something happens in life, that is connected to the outside world, whether that's going on, in politics, or whether that's going on in terms of the economy, or whether that's going on with other people in my life that I don't have control over, could I elevate my understanding of anger or irritation that arises when I feel out of control? Because very often that's what happens. When we don't feel in control over something that happens in the outside world, we get sometimes really angry, or we get really irritated with what other people are doing or saying or how they're behaving. So we want to kind of like start to take responsibility for the emotion that comes up, and we want to also have a better understanding of how that's connected to feeling out of control. And could I focus on what is mine to change or do and give the rest over to my higher self or source? And I think this is a beautiful question, because very often, we're not always so clear, like where do I have the ability to change things or to do things, and where don't I? So very often we have a hard time distinguishing which one is which. So could I focus on what is mine to change or do and give the rest over to my higher self or source or to the universe? And this last question, of course, really reminds me of the Serenity prayers. I'm sure a lot of you know that prayer. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference, which I think is a beautiful prayer. And I grew up with that prayer in my house. My parents had a little photograph of that prayer in a frame in the hallway. So I remember when I was little, I always looked at that prayer and I thought it was such an incredibly great thing to think about and to master, to be able to do that. I also want to mention here that we talked about all the Mars transits that I just mentioned here in connection with our own birth chart in our last forecasting forum. You can purchase this 110-minute webinar on my website, but there's also going to be a link below this video if you can't find it on my website. Okay, so just click on the link below if that's of interest to you. And we also will relate the upcoming Mars station and retrograde phases in Aries, which start in the end of August, and then also the retrograde starts in September. We will talk about that in relationship to our own birth charts in my next forecasting forum on August 30th. So please, for those of you who are star members, please note that this is a new date. It's not the same date that I had originally given for this particular forum. I had to move it a week earlier because of the holiday that we have in America. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with my forums, it's a 90+ minute webinar that I conduct every month. It's interactive. You can ask me questions about your chart. And we always look at our own birth charts to see how the current planetary weather impacts each one of us personally. So we take a look at that for each month. And if you want to join live or register for the MP4 video presentation, click on the link below this video. You can also register via my website on the home page. And as always, there is going to be an early bird special that will be available. This time it's going to be available until August 27th at midnight. All right, so take advantage of that if you want to get a deal on this webinar. And also, as a reminder to all star members of my online community, you are automatically registered and you will receive emails the day before and the day of the webinar inviting you to join live. And you will also receive another email with a link to the video replay of the forum within 24 hours of the live event. All right, so that's what I want to say about the forums. That's enough. Now, in the spirit of 6 degrees of separation, let's also talk about Saturn in Capricorn making some quincunxes to the new moon in Leo and the North Node in Gemini. So these quincunxes, which are sort of like, it's like an aspect that requires adjustment, inner adjustment for ourselves and feels uncomfortable. These quincunxes, because there's 2 of them, they create a Yod-aspect, which is called a Yod, or the finger of God, because it's pointing towards a planet, in this case Saturn, which is the focus planet. And this means we are being invited to take a serious look at our long-term goals, social structures, and accomplishments to this point. Again, Saturn represents the principle of responsibility, caution, healthy boundaries, maturity, masterful approaches, building structures that can last, etc. Right? So it's all about, it's very earthbound, it's very realistic, and it is also connected to society and to who we are out there in the world, how we want to be seen out there in the world. So ask yourself, where am I in regards to my long-term goals and achievements? Where would I like to be? How realistic is my approach to get there? What's my next step? And if I divided the distance from here to there, right, where I'm here currently and where I would like to be, into small little action steps, what might those look like? And that's important with Saturn, right? We want to always slow down and take small steps, steadily and deliberately and continuously, but we want to take small steps. Now, some other questions you can ask here as well with Saturn is, am I honest with myself about my human limitations? Very important, because we all have limitations, and if we're not honest about them with ourselves, we tend to keep hitting a wall, right? With Saturn, we tend to keep hitting these limitations and these walls when we're not honest about our own limitations. But if we are, then we tend to do a lot better, because then we can adjust. We can look to see how can we work with the limitations that we have. How can we overcome these limitations? Now, another question you can ask here as well is, am I taking the time to practice the skills I have yet to master? So if you understand your limitations, you can also start to practice certain skills so you can master and get better, and you can go beyond your own limitations. Now, have I learned to say no to people, situations, and things that do not further my goals? That's also a very Saturnian question. Have I learned to say no? And if I'm still having a hard time with this, could I practice saying no to at least one thing in my life that simply does not work for me in the long run? And with Saturn, we always have to be very honest, right? So it's not about being pessimistic. It's really more about being very honest. Now, let's talk about Uranus for a moment. And you might ask, why? Why Uranus? We were talking about so many planets already. Because Uranus at the time of this new moon is exalted. So Uranus, because it's still moving slowly after starting its retrograde phase, which it will begin on August 15th, right? So if you're watching this before August 15th, it hasn't started yet. But if you're watching this at the time of the new moon, Uranus has already gone retrograde, because it happens 3 days before the new moon becomes exact. So that's why we want to talk about Uranus. But actually, before I go more into the energy of Uranus, I also want to say this new moon chart is unique because we have 6 retrograde planets in this new moon chart. So bear in mind that there's only 9 planets that can even go retrograde. So this means that we have a chance to be more in tune with all of these planets' energies. So which ones are they? We have Jupiter retrograde already since the spring. Saturn has been retrograde since the spring. Chiron has been retrograde since the beginning of the summer. Uranus is about to go retrograde, or is retrograde depending on when you watch this. Neptune has gone retrograde in the beginning of the summer as well. And Pluto has been retrograde since the spring as well. So you can see we have a lot of planets retrograde right now. And so we are accessing these energies of these 6 planets from the inside out right now, turning our attention towards what is no longer in alignment with our innermost selves. In other words, it's sort of like an inside job. We have to really kind of like connect internally, take time to do that inner work. So ask yourself, is the outside world aligned with my inner world? And if the answer is no, to a certain degree, because some things might be in alignment and some things might not be in alignment. If the answer is no in some ways, ask yourself, where are the gaps? Where might I start to close some of these gaps? So that's something we can ask ourselves, especially for the next month. Now back to Uranus. This planet highlights where we're being called to break old patterns and make radical shifts, both collectively and individually speaking. And since this energy is really loud right now, we really want to kind of engage with that planet in particular more. Ask yourself, what is confronting me at this time around financial freedom or practical yet unique approaches to being comfortable and enjoying life on a physical level? What might need to break down for me to have a breakthrough? And is there anything in my life that I need to approach with progress in mind? Because Uranus is about progress. So is there anything in my life, especially in my physical world, right? Because Uranus is in Taurus right now. So we want to look at the physical world, the earth, the planet. We want to look at our own physical body. We want to look at the physical things that we have in life, you know, our house that we live in, or our apartment that we live in, our finances, our money that we have, right? These are all physical things. Is there anything in my life that I need to approach with progress in mind? Now remember, doing the inner work is just as important as making progress in the outer world. The inner universe informs the outer, right? They're always connected. That's why astrology is so powerful and so accurate, because we're seeing the outer universe reflected in our inner universe as well. They're reflected by each other. So the inner universe, which is inside of us, informs the outer world, and one cannot happen without the other. So we have 6 months to take a look inside at whatever has been thwarting our progress or sense of freedom. So ask yourself, where are these inner roadblocks popping up right now? Could I give myself some introspective time to receive some practical insights and ideas to help me go around those roadblocks and journey into the next phase of my life? So these are some important questions that we definitely want to play with, you know, and especially while Uranus is still stationing, which will be until the end of August, by the way. Now, since Uranus is currently in Taurus, it answers to Venus, because Venus rules Taurus. And Venus is currently in Cancer. So Venus in Cancer sextiles Uranus in Taurus almost exactly, and she also squares Chiron in Aries. So let's unpack that. Venus's sextile to Uranus gives us the opportunity to connect to family or our founded family in new and unusual ways. So what you can ask yourself is, what if just for right now, I allowed myself 5% more time and energy to experiment with honoring my own unique talents and what I have to offer to the world? And how might that impact my relationship to the people I share my life or my home with? And then another question you can ask here is, might a practical yet unique or at least unusual approach to my resources support me in feeling physically and emotionally safe in my own skin and in my home? And what might such an approach look like? So feel free to journal on these questions, right? Because very often with these questions, it's wise to not seek the answer, but to allow the answer to come to you. And when we journal or when we meditate on a question, we are more open to receiving the answer. So it can be very beneficial to do either journaling or meditation with these questions. Now, Venus is square to Chiron, which is the last aspect we'll be talking about, provides an opportunity to learn from one another. But ironically, social insecurities can be really magnified over the next 2 weeks in particular. So as best as you can, use this time to learn about your sore spots, because nobody is perfect. We all have our stuff. We all have our flaws. We all have our idiosyncrasies. And it's completely okay. There's nothing wrong with that. It makes us more human. It makes us more relatable to each other, right? Because we all know that we have that. So ask yourself, could I inspire others even if I let them see that I am a feeling being? Or maybe even because I allow them to see that I have vulnerabilities and I'm human. And what might become possible if I allowed myself to be both vulnerable and courageous? So these are some great questions to ask around this Venus Chiron square. Now, to sum it all up for this new moon invites us to reconnect to what lights us up in life, to what we love, and to how we want to express that in the world. It also wants us to consider working within the framework of what is realistic at this time, staying grounded in reality and conscious about what we can and cannot do, and also in connection with social limitations. It also invites us to tap into our healthy masculine by acting from a courageous place. So you can ask yourself, what might it feel like to be myself without apology, without needing anyone's permission or approval, yet taking responsibility for all that I am being? And for the next 4 weeks, I also want to invite you to pause occasionally and ask yourself these questions. What am I grateful for in my life? How could I express that gratitude, and to whom? Could I express my joy directly and honestly? And how could I go about engaging others in a joyful dialogue that aligns with my inner truth? And these are some great questions to ask over the next 4 weeks. Now, if you have an ascendant or any personal planets in 24 to 29 degrees of Leo, Aquarius, Taurus, or Scorpio, then this new moon will definitely have more of an impact on you personally. But even if you don't have any planets or points in those degrees and signs, take a look at your own birth chart and take a look to see where does 26.5 degrees of Leo land in your birth chart. Where is that taking place? And that area of life, that house placement in your natal chart, is the placement that will indicate which area of life is most impacted for you for the next 28 days. You can also check out my 30-minute class on how to read your birth chart. If you don't know how to look this up in your own birth chart, you can get free access via my homepage to that class at astrologercoach.com. Just scroll down on the homepage until you find a window that says free class, and then just click on that window and you will get there. All right, so now the moment that we've all waiting for, how do we set our new moon intentions, or when shall we set our new moon intentions? The new moon is the best time to set intentions for the next moon cycle. And as always, the best time for this intention setting process is soon after the new moon becomes exact, and definitely not during the moon void of course phase. So if you don't know what a moon void of course phase is, then take a look at my weekly forecasts on my website, because I always mention when the moon void of course phases are taking place each week. And so you don't want to set your new moon intentions during that time, because that's not a fruitful time for us to put something to focus on something, or to put something to paper that we want a result with. So in this month, this means that the best and most potent time to set intentions would be during a short period for 3 hours, almost 3 hours, between 10:42 p.m. on August 18th until 1:38 a.m. on August 19th, or after the moon void of course is over, which is much longer, between 4:20 a.m. on August 19th until 10:42 p.m. on August 20th. So that's a much longer time period. And as always, all of those times are given in Eastern Daylight Savings Time, New York time zone. If you live outside of that particular time zone, feel free to convert to your own time zone. Or if that's not your thing, I suggest that you can join my Facebook fan page or follow me on Twitter. I will be posting reminders on August 18th, 19th, and 20th, whenever it's the best time to set these intentions. So when you see those reminders pop up on Twitter or on my Facebook fan page, then just take a look when I've written it and then sit down and write your intentions. You can write them down on paper, or you can just, think about what it is that you're intending for the month, whatever works best for you. For more information about how to set intentions, if you've never done it before, go to my website and go to my blog page and then look for astrology articles or look for the tag New Moon Intentions. I will also put a link below this video as well. In case you can't find it on my website, just click on the link below this video. Now, to sign up for my free monthly newsletter, just go to my homepage at astrologercoach.com and just put your email address there. You can also email me at info@astrologercoach.com and just write newsletter in the subject line if you prefer. These monthly newsletters, they have special offers in them. They have my new moon video in them. I also make announcements about courses that I do or, webinars. So anything like that will be in the newsletter. And the newsletter goes out about once or twice a month. Now, if you have any general questions for me about astrology or about the new moon, feel free to email me at info@astrologercoach.com. If you have any personal questions that require of me to pull up a birth chart, then please book a reading on my website via my services page, or any questions that are connected to what's coming up within the next 30 to 40 days. Join the next monthly forecasting forum on August 30th because I take questions there as well. And again, we will focus on the upcoming Mars retrograde phase in Aries, as well as the Jupiter and Mars station phases. So if you have any questions about those things in relationship to your own birth chart, feel free to join us for the forecasting forum. And please remember this, there is an early bird special that's available until August 27th. Now, you will also get access to the next Members Full Moon video when you register for the monthly forecasting forum, if you're not a member of my online community yet. And the link to register for the forums is below this video as well, or on my homepage via the monthly forecasting forum countdown. Okay, so that's it for this new moon. My members will see me again in 2 weeks around the time of the full moon, so we can take a look of how far we've come since setting our new moon intentions. And everyone else will get to see me again in 4 weeks for the next new moon in September. However, feel free to watch out for my additional support videos as well that will be posted on my website and on my YouTube channel throughout the next 4 weeks. All right, so have a fantastic new moon. Stay healthy. Do your best to keep raising your own frequencies. That's the best thing that you can do for yourself and for the world right now. So have a good one. Much love, and I'll see you soon.